Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be having a look at a very interesting vintage Athearn locomotive from the 1950s. This is what's known as a Hustler locomotive, and when Athearn released these back in 1957, they were the smallest locomotives you could buy from them. They came in a variety of different paint schemes and were part of their yellow box era. And the primary reason that they made these was because at the time, if you wanted to buy a four-wheel diesel locomotive, you only had one other option, which was Penn Line. So Athearn wanted to create something that was a little bit more budget-friendly, so they made their own version of the four-wheel diesel, and they sold it at half the price. Part of the way they were able to cut the price down so much was because they used a new drive system they had developed called the High F drive, which was a gearless system, and they promoted these things as being fast, quiet, and powerful. The power is a little bit questionable, but they certainly had figured out a creative way to make these things run quiet without spending a whole lot of money, and making something without too many moving parts. Anyways, the box itself is just beautiful. I really love what they've done with the artwork. You can see it's being listed as an industrial switcher on all sides. And then on the back, they had some of the other yellow box era products you could buy. You can see they had some different rolling stock and another locomotive which used the exact same drive, just with more wheels. One of the most interesting parts of this box, though, is the fact that it had its own display built in. You can see this is all cut out. So when these would arrive at the stores back in the 50s, to your local hobby shop, they would fold this part in right here. And just like that, the locomotive came with its own point of sale display. Very, very cool. Now here's the locomotive itself. As I mentioned, they came in a variety of different paint schemes. This one is the black and silver model. I really like the design of it. It's very simple. The only difference they would do for colors is label on the side which kind they were, so that's what this one is. Anyways, this particular model my buddy found at a model train show a few months ago. It was listed for $5. I think he talked the guy down to $1 for it, which seems like a really good deal for this thing. I don't really know anything about it though. I don't even know if it runs. But these things tend to be very reliable, and the fact that he was able to find one in a box for $1 is a pretty remarkable deal. So let's get this thing out of the box. You can see the original sticker is even still on it. And we'll have a look at it, and then we'll go test it out. So yeah, there the locomotive is. By today's standards, the detail is not too incredible. But you can see how back in the 1950s, this must have been a very cool locomotive. And Athearn also made some accessories for it. There was actually a plow which you could buy separately and attach to the front. And there might have been a propeller mod too. I'm not 100% sure, but they're very unusual design of locomotives. And you can see right here, these are the bands which actually power it. So anyways, we'll take it over to the track, we'll see if this thing actually works, and then I'll open it up and show you all what this thing looks like on the inside, and we'll do any repairs / maintenance if necessary. So let's take it over to the track. It's hard to tell if this locomotive is going to start. It is a 60-year-old engine, and the wheels look a little bit rough, but the bands look to be in good condition, which is a sign that somebody's maintained it. They also replaced the couplers with KDs, which is nice to see. A lot of these have good motors in them because the bands were so notorious for breaking. You see a lot of them where they haven't run in 20 plus years because nobody bothered to replace the bands. Anyways, let's give this one some power and see if it will start up. I'm putting a bit of power in the track, and I do see some movement. And wow, surprisingly this one's already going. It's not too bad. So these engines were not known for their performance. In fact, they were so poorly geared or banded, I don't know how you would call it in this case, that they could actually apparently do over 250 scale miles an hour. And you'll see this in a second here. These things can really zip around the layout. They're quite entertaining locomotives, but I can see how somebody trying to buy something realistic at the time might be disappointed with those kinds of results. Anyways, we'll bring this one back over to the workbench because it does appear to have high current draw despite how well it's running. And while we throw some fresh oil in it, I'll actually show you kind of how they put this whole thing together. So we're just going to work our way down to the motor on this locomotive. We'll lift up both sides and we'll just slowly get in here. And here we are inside. You can see you got two bands which just wrap around these shafts right here. You've got one wire which connects the ground on this side, and then the power on the other side is actually just picked up through the frame. You can see all of this is isolated right here. Now, the motor in this case appears to have a dirty commutator, which would be why it has high current draw. So we'll disassemble this a little bit and we'll try to clean that up, as well as cleaning the wheels. That should improve the performance quite a bit. The bands in this engine look to be actual Athearn bands. You see a lot of aftermarket stuff installed on these, which don't usually perform as well. Some hobby shops do sell these bands if you need to replace them. Athearn at the time, though, boldly claimed these engines could pull about 16 cars. I have a hard time believing that, but once we service this engine, I want to put that theory to the test and see what this thing can actually haul. So our goal is going to be to remove this part right here. We're going to begin by lifting off the spring and just putting it to the side. I guess we'll get this band out of the way, and then we'll just try to get a screwdriver down here and loosen up this bolt right here. It's in a little bit of an awkward spot, so I don't know how well this is all going to go, but we just want to try to pull this back, and we'll also bring that with it, so that might be a bit of an issue, but I'll just go along with that. And now that we've got that out of the way, we can service the commutator. We'll start off by using a plastic pick to clean out the gaps on the commutator. This is usually why engines of this era have high current draw. You know, the motors they were putting in these things are not the most efficient. They weren't super efficient when they left the factory, and their earth magnets weakening has not helped that either. But cleaning out the motors certainly will hurt. Certainly will help. It won't hurt is what I want to say. And now that we've got the gaps all cleaned, we'll follow that up with a fiberglass pencil and we'll polish up the commutator. And with that all tidied up, I think we can put everything back into place here. With the motor serviced, we'll now tackle cleaning out the bearings on this locomotive. We'll remove both of these screws right here. You have to be kind of careful when you do this though, because these are really all that holds the whole locomotive together. So once you get rid of these, everything is going to come apart. So the journals on this one appear to be in pretty good shape, but we'll just put a Q-tip in there with some rubbing alcohol just to clean out any old lubricant. Everything looks to be quite tidy, but we'll just do it anyway. We'll just clean these up as well, checking for any little bits of dust or hair which might have accumulated on the ends here. And while we have the wheels apart, why not clean them up using a track abrasive cleaning pad? Alternatively, you could use a fiberglass pencil, although it might take a little bit longer. And we'll just polish those up until they look nice and shiny. Well, those are all looking a little bit better. Before we put this back together, we're just going to put the bands around here. This is a step you definitely do not want to forget. We'll throw some fresh oil right in there, and then we'll just put these back on here. Always double check your insulators are good on the screws as well. Now we're going to put the bands back around the shafts of the motor. It doesn't matter which way you do it, it will just affect the direction, but both of them have to be facing the same way, otherwise they will actually end up going opposite directions and both wheels will be working against each other, which is obviously not what you want. So we'll get this one there. I think it's supposed to go like that, but we'll double check. I might have messed it up. Let's see here. So that's what you don't want to do. They're both turning the wrong way, so we'll just take this and we'll spin it around like that. Let's see if they're now going the same way. And they're now rotating the correct direction. So this is all basically ready to go. Let's throw a little bit of oil on the bearings for the motor, and this thing should be pretty good. I should point out too that later models did have actual gears, and a lot of people have remotored those. Some of the ones in the 50s though had a system where they would actually add some other bands which would kind of act as a gear reduction, although again there were no gears, so I don't know really what you would call it. But anyways, that was just another solution people would use to try to get these things to slow down at least a little bit. So let's see how that's done. Yeah, the current draw has dropped quite a bit. It was pulling about 3/4 of an amp. Now it's pulling about a 1/2 an amp, which for an engine of its age is pretty usual. So now that we've presumably got this thing into the best working order that we can, the question has to be asked, can it actually pull 16 cars? Well, set them up and find out. Alright, well there we have it, 16 of some of the lightest cars I have. I removed any which I considered too heavy and just replaced them with lighter ones I could find, just so that we're, being fair on this thing. Also, I know that the last car is, a caboose, so it's kind of different from a box car, but whatever. Let's see if this thing can pull the 16 cars that Athearn claimed it could. Alright, so nothing yet. Give it more power. It doesn't seem to be doing great so far. Let's try giving it a push start, see if it just needs to gain a little bit of traction. It is going slightly uphill here too, to be fair, but that is struggling. I don't know. So this part of the layout is slightly slanted down, so that should give it an advantage. But it still seems to be struggling pretty bad. It's not far off, but it's not having it. I mean, to be fair, I don't know how old these bands are. They look okay, like they've got good grip, but it's possible that you need to have brand new bands in order for it to be able to pull 16 cars. But they did claim with these, and I can't say I'm really seeing it. Well, folks, I think that's going to be about it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. This is sort of the first time I've done sort of almost like a retro review of one of these things, or sort of explain the history briefly and then actually show how the model works and runs. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed, because there are many more models out there I'd love to shoot a video like this for, so let me know. I would also like to give some credit where credit is due. A lot of the information I found in this video is from HO Collector, so I'm going to leave a link to their article on this, because there's a lot of very interesting information and a lot of pictures and things like that from the time. So yeah, go check them out. Anyways, with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching.